South Korea's president, Lee Jae-myung, gave a very serious warning in September 2025. He said that demands from the United States for a new investment could cause a big money crisis. This crisis would be like the terrible one that happened in 1997 in Asia. This strong warning worried many people in financial markets and diplomatic circles around the world. It was a desperate message from South Korea, a very close friend and ally of America. The problem started with a deal made in July 2025. In this deal, South Korea promised to invest $350 billion in American projects. This was part of a larger trade agreement between the two countries. The main goal was to lower U.S. taxes on South Korean goods, like cars and computer chips. These taxes, called tariffs, would go down from 25% to 15%. But now, this deal has turned into a major disagreement. South Korean officials are warning that if they accept the current U.S. rules for this investment, their country could face a severe financial disaster. This disaster would be much like the difficult times they experienced in 1997. This agreement happened after many urgent talks. Countries were trying to finish deals before President Donald Trump's deadline of August 1, 2025. President Trump had planned to put much higher tariffs on goods. South Korea was facing the risk of 25% tariffs on its important exports. So, the deal seemed to offer good things for both sides. The United States would lower tariffs on South Korean goods. In return, South Korea would invest $350 billion in American projects that President Trump would choose. South Korea also agreed to buy $100 billion worth of U.S. energy products. For President Lee Jae-myung, who took office in June 2025, this deal looked like an important early victory for his country. However, the main problem is in the specific details of how this big investment will be made. Many of these details are still not clear and cause disagreement. The basic issue is how South Korea should structure this huge financial promise and how to protect its money. U.S. officials, led by Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, want South Korea to make immediate cash investments. They also want 90% of any profits from these investments to go back to the United States. This is similar to a deal Japan made earlier, but South Korea says it cannot agree to these exact terms. They believe it would put their national savings and economy at too high a risk. 2. A bad memory. South Korea has a strong reason to worry. The country remembers a very bad time in its history, the 1997 Asian financial crisis. This crisis started in July of 1997 in another country, but it quickly reached South Korea. By December of that year, South Korea faced huge economic problems. It was a painful time that changed the country's economy and its people forever. Before the crisis, South Korea's big companies, called chaebols, borrowed a lot of money. The country's total foreign debt grew very fast. It went from about $40 billion in 1993 to more than $150 billion. The government also kept the country's money, the won too high compared to the US dollar. This made the economy weak. When the crisis hit, South Korea's savings of foreign money quickly went down. They fell from $30 billion to only $4 billion in a few months. Then the won lost most of its value, falling by as much as 95% against the US dollar. Companies that had borrowed money in other currencies could not pay their debts anymore. The cost of paying back loans became too high. The economy suffered greatly. The country's growth rate fell sharply. Prices for goods went up and many people lost their jobs. The unemployment rate became very high, like it was during the Korean War. South Korea needed help. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, stepped in. It gave South Korea a rescue package of $55 billion. This was the biggest help package the IMF had ever given at that time. But this help came with very difficult rules. South Korea had to make its economy smaller and change its financial system. It also had to raise interest rates, making it very expensive to borrow money. The country was forced to open its markets more to foreign businesses. These changes caused a lot of pain for South Korean people. Millions of people became poor. Many families suffered because people could not find work. For many, it felt like a second national humiliation for the country. 3. The danger today. South Korea today feels a dangerous echo of the year 1997. This is what many people, including President Lee Jae-myung, believe. The country faces a very big problem because of a huge payment of $350 billion. This large amount of money is part of a trade deal with the United States. This payment is a huge risk for South Korea's economy. Every country keeps money safe for emergencies. These are called foreign exchange reserves. South Korea's reserves are about $416 billion. If South Korea has to pay the $350 billion in the way the United States is asking, it would use almost 85% of these vital savings. Such a big outflow of money could make the country very vulnerable. President Lee has clearly warned that if South Korea must pay all this money in cash without proper support, it could cause a financial crisis similar to the one in 1997. That year, South Korea's money, the won, lost most of its value. Many businesses collapsed, and millions of people lost their jobs. It was a time of great pain and difficulty for the nation. The danger today comes from the need to quickly change a massive amount of won into US dollars. When a country sells a lot of its own money to buy another currency, it puts a lot of selling pressure on its money. This pressure would make the won much weaker, causing its value to fall very fast. If the won loses value, imported goods become more expensive, and businesses that owe money in US dollars find it much harder to pay their debts. This could quickly lead to many companies failing. Unlike countries such as Japan, which has much larger reserves and special financial agreements, South Korea lacks these crucial safety nets. This makes its currency especially open to risk. A sudden, sharp drop in the won's value could overwhelm the country's financial system. This could trigger the exact kind of speculative attack and economic meltdown that devastated South Korea in 1997. The country's leaders are trying hard to prevent this severe danger from happening again. 4. A way to help. South Korea proposed a clear solution to the serious economic problem. They asked the United States for a currency swap agreement. President Lee Jae-myung warned that without this important help, South Korea could face another financial crisis, very similar to the one in 1997. He clearly stated that if South Korea had to pay $350 billion in cash, as the U.S. asked, it would use almost all of the country's money reserves. This large payment would make South Korea's money, the won, much weaker and very unstable. A currency swap acts like a strong safety net for a country's finances. It allows a country to borrow US dollars from the Federal Reserve when its own money market is in trouble. This action helps to reduce pressure on the country's local money and protects its valuable foreign exchange reserves from dropping too quickly. The United States has a long history of using these currency swaps to help its allies when they need support. For instance, there are permanent swap agreements with major partners like Canada, the United Kingdom, Japan, the European Union, and Switzerland. During the global financial crisis of 2008 and the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. Federal Reserve also set up temporary swap lines with South Korea and other nations, providing billions of dollars in emergency money. However, the U.S. government is currently uncertain about agreeing to this new swap request from South Korea. The Trump administration has shown that it does not want to make too many new money promises to foreign countries. Instead, it prefers agreements that clearly and immediately benefit the United States. Some officials in the U.S. government might see South Korea's request for an unlimited swap line as a way to gain special advantages during a trade discussion, rather than simply as a necessary financial protection. The timing of South Korea's request also makes the situation more difficult. Previous swap arrangements were created during very clear financial emergencies. But now, South Korea is asking for protection against a crisis that could happen because of the U.S. own demands for a large investment. This unique situation presents a complex diplomatic and political challenge for both allied nations to navigate. 5. Big companies and big problems. Chapter 5 looks at South Korea's largest companies. These are powerful, family-owned business groups known as chaebols. Even after the big financial crisis in 1997, these companies remain very important to the country's economy. Large companies like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG are key parts of this system. They manage a big share of South Korea's business activities, both at home and around the world. While these chaebols have grown a lot globally, their wide reach and complex international businesses also create new kinds of risks for the economy. The chaebols today are more modern than they were in 1997. They have better management rules and lower debt. But their many global operations and long supply chains still mean there are vulnerabilities. If these big companies were forced to sell off their assets or operations in other countries quickly to meet the U.S. investment demands, it could cause big problems. This kind of action could spread through the entire Korean economy. It might even lead to company failures, similar to what happened during the crisis in 1997. South Korea also plays a very important role in global technology. Its companies are world leaders in making computer chips. For instance, Samsung and SK Hynix make a huge amount of the world's memory chips. These small, powerful components are used in almost everything today, from smartphones and cars to large data centers and other advanced machines. The chip industry needs a lot of money to operate, and its business goes through periods of high and low demand. If the U.S. demands force these companies to move a lot of their money towards American investments, especially when the chip market is slow, it could make them weaker. This situation would not only harm South Korea's economy, but could also have serious effects on the global economy. South Korea is the world's 10th largest economy, and it is a vital part of many global supply chains. Therefore, a financial crisis in South Korea would not just stay inside its borders. It would quickly disturb global supply chains. This could lead to big shortages and much higher prices for important technologies everywhere in the world. Many countries rely on South Korea for essential goods, especially these computer chips. If South Korea faces major economic problems, the impact could be felt far and wide. This clearly shows why finding a stable and safe way to handle the current investment issues is so important for everyone. 6. An important friendship. The United States and South Korea share a very old and important friendship. For over 70 years, they have been strong allies. Their partnership began with the Mutual Defense Treaty in 1953, promising to protect each other. Today, about 28,500 American soldiers are stationed in South Korea. This shows the deep military ties that keep peace and security in the region. This alliance has faced many challenges in the past and has always remained strong. However, the current disagreement about money is testing this important friendship. South Korea agreed to invest $350 billion in the U.S., but fears this large payment could cause an economic crisis at home. To feel safe, South Korea has asked the U.S. for a special financial safety net called a currency swap. President Lee Jae-myung of South Korea has spoken about this, saying that even blood allies need to act in a reasonable way. The U.S. government under President Donald Trump wants the investment but has not yet agreed to the currency swap. This difference makes the alliance strained. Other events have also added to the difficulties. In September 2025, there was an incident at a factory in Georgia. This factory is owned by Hyundai LG Energy Solution, a South Korean company. More than 300 South Korean workers were held by immigration officials, and some were seen in restraints. This event caused strong negative feelings in South Korea. President Lee warned that such actions could make South Korean companies hesitant to invest more in the United States. These issues create more tension in the relationship. Both countries have important national interests to protect. The U.S. government seeks the large investment to support its economy and reduce trade imbalances. South Korea, remembering the painful 1997 financial crisis, must protect its economy from similar dangers. It also has important technology industries, like computer chips, that are vital to the world. Balancing the needs of both friends is crucial. A strong alliance between the U.S. and South Korea is very important for stability in the Indo-Pacific area, especially with challenges from countries like North Korea and China. Keeping this deep friendship strong is more valuable than any quick economic benefit. The world is watching to see how these two allies manage their different needs. 7. Finding an answer. To find a way out of the difficult situation, both the United States and South Korea started looking for ideas. The big problem was how South Korea would pay the $350 billion. People needed to find plans that would help both countries. One important idea was to make the investment in smaller parts over many years. Instead of giving all the money at once, South Korea could pay it bit by bit. This phased investment approach would take away the pressure on South Korea's money supply. It would make sure the country's savings did not disappear quickly. Such an approach has been used before in other large international deals. It allows for changes if the global economy becomes better or worse, offering more flexibility. Another way to help was to use different kinds of investment plans. Instead of just sending cash, South Korea could invest in other ways. For example, they could make equity investments, which means buying a share in American companies or projects. They could also focus on technology transfers or starting joint ventures with U.S. companies. These ideas would still bring important value to the United States, but they would not put South Korea's own money at such a high risk, protecting its financial health. South Korean companies are very good at making computer chips and electric cars. Their skills could help American businesses grow and create jobs. Many financial experts and economists have spoken about this problem. They mostly agree that South Korea's worries about a 1997-like crisis are serious and real. These experts know that demanding a huge cash payment all at once could cause big problems. Even important international financial groups have shown concern. They remember the past and want to avoid new financial trouble for any country. They believe smart financial solutions are needed to keep the global economy stable and protect the friendship between the two countries. Finding a good answer is very important for everyone, ensuring stability for both nations and the wider world. 8. The final choice. This chapter is about the very important decision facing both South Korea and the United States. The problem began with a $350 billion investment deal. For South Korea, the danger is real. Its president, Lee Myung, has warned that paying this money without help could cause another financial crisis, like the one in 1997. This payment could use up almost all of South Korea's money saved for hard times. If that happens, the value of their money, the won, could fall very fast. This would hurt big Korean companies and the important computer chip industry, which the whole world needs. For the United States, led by President Donald Trump, the goal is to get this large investment. But if the deal makes South Korea's economy weak, it could also hurt the U.S. The two countries have been strong friends and allies for over 70 years. A fight over money could damage this important friendship. Also, a crisis in South Korea, the world's 10th largest economy, would affect global trade and supply chains for computer chips. The world is watching to see how this problem will be solved. There are different ways this story can end. One good way is if both countries find a compromise. This could mean South Korea invests the money over many years, or the US agrees to a currency swap. A currency swap acts like a safety net, helping South Korea get dollars if its own money becomes too weak. If they find a good solution, both economies can grow and their strong friendship can continue. However, if they do not agree, things could get bad. South Korea might have to give in to US demands without any protection. This could indeed lead to a financial crisis, as President Lee has warned. The US might also put higher taxes on Korean goods, hurting trade. This would be bad for both countries and for the world economy. The final choice will show how much these two friends value their alliance and global stability. What do you think will happen next? Will South Korea and the US find a way to agree and avoid a crisis?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.